Great, long time. Are you at home?
Yeah, I'm at home.
Okay, good. So I'm happy that you made it for this time. It was like a pretty short notice. So I
Yeah.
couldn't get you to Poland, but at least I can have you here.
Yeah, well, my schedule, as it turns out, is kind of open these days.
How was Philippines?
Philippines was cool. Yeah, I think we did a couple weeks in Thailand before that, and I think actually it was a little bit too long. We haven't, we're not used to our long trips like we used to do. So, but the conference was good. Solid, like 200 people. Um, and it was there were a lot of really inspiring like entrepreneurial stories there, because basically, I mean, it really is it's a poor country. It's weird to say that, because when you're in the Philippines, it's high rises everywhere, but you know there were there are like basically Brazilian style favelas next to the airport, or I mean, total slums. And there's not, I don't know, there's a lot of mobility there. So basically, anyone working in tech, or anyone being an entrepreneur in the white collar sense, is they're they are like they're making they're potentially changing the course of their, not just themselves, but their family,
Okay.
right? So
But
the entrepreneurial force is really strong there.
yeah, like you have to do something just to survive. So you build business.
Yep.
That's and you think that that's something I noticed at Meet Magento Poland, that I think it's really time that Meet Magento is a tech conference again. We don't try to make it a business
Yeah.
conference. It's like it's like we started. That is a
Yeah.
great space for developers, project managers, all people who really understand the technology and wants to even know it better. So like that was good for Meet Magento Poland for sure. That people felt it's consistent. They have good lineup on stage. Like everyone was more or less interested. We had full room. So do you see the same on in Philippines or other events? You started attending them again.
Yeah, I mean, I did, I was in New York, um, yeah, New York, and then Philippines. It was,
Yeah,
I,
I know how it was. So maybe let's stay with Philippines. You will come back to those events, like from your
well,
perspective right now at PHP. Do you think it makes sense for you in this new position, or you think that Magento
well,
is an important pillar for PHP?
well, I think I treat the two streams separately. So my involvement with PHP Foundation came around because I started. Um, I think I'd reached out. I think I saw them calling for funding. This was over a year ago. I was actually at the Web Engineering Conference in Mallorca, and had this conversation with Roman, who's been the executive director since PHP Foundation was founded about 4 years ago, and he's stepping down, so he's going to be gone in, I think, Q1 of 2026. But I was just like, hey, like, how do you guys do funding? Because it's a remarkable number that you guys achieve every year. But I see, big players coming in. WordPress throws in Automatic throws in a ton of money. Laravel, Symfony, JetBrains is not only the money, but also has kind of created the space for Roman to be able to have this role. And so really, JetBrains is I think the linchpin, the key has been the key sponsor and facilitator there. But I was like, how are you guys doing this? How do you guys do the funding? And they're like, well, the funding basically it comes in.
Keeps coming.
We just kind of ask people. I mean, it's I'm abbreviating it a little bit. It's not like they're just sort of sitting there on their hands waiting for the money to come in, but they've had really good institutional sponsorship just without having to have a formal sponsorship, what I would think of as a formal, like, nonprofit sort of sales cycle and tooling and everything else. And after we struggled to get sponsorship for Magento Association when that was spun up in 2018, I was like, well, this is really critical stuff. This is like critical technology for like the modern information age, like because so much content exists because exists and is available because PHP is there. Um, so it seems like we really should have a formal process. Also, I kind of this sort of feeling that the economy is not always going to just keep rising, and there's always going to be this goodwill and money available. So I really wanted to make sure that um, the PHP Foundation was set up to do proper fundraising and implement proper tooling. And that's what I've been working on slowly. It took us really a long time from the announcement to really get to a point where this is all coming together. Now, I bring that up, in the context of the question that you asked, because I think that's its own thing. But a similar kind of issue is how do we, the Magento is still very important to me and I want to spend time there. Now, for me to go to events in far off places, I can't subsidize that myself. Like I said, I mean, I haven't had a paycheck since May,
Hmm.
and my savings only goes so far. Um, so basically I have to have some help to be able to get to these events, but I
Yeah,
do
now
want,
now
I,
we have now we have to build a fund just to bring
well, we got, yeah,
the
you
legends
gotta
to
get
the
get get
event.
Ben get Ben back in the air. No, I mean, and it's a fun joke, but I mean, you know, speaking a little more, realistically, it is important to make sure that the administration, the funding, and but also just the cultural interest, remains and is supported and can evolve also as time goes on. So I'd like to, I have been interested, and I had a lot of conversations at Meet Magento New York, and a bit, asynchronously or offline before and after about how we see the future of Magento working. How does what is the relationship with Adobe? We know what it has been. We kind of know what it is now, and Adobe's there. They have the current. I think the status quo with Magento Association is Adobe will match whatever funds the association can raise, right? Which is I think appropriate for Adobe, but it certainly does also send a message. But I think it's appropriate for where their head is at. But like, I'm of the opinion that yeah, I've recently had conversations. Well, I've had conversations this year with Ganti and with Lonnie Stark over at Adobe. You've got incredibly bright people who have their remit, um, and it's not clear to me. Um, it's not really clear to me how Magento fits into that. I think Magento is interesting to Adobe for two reasons would be my guess, right? One, they paid $1.7 billion for the Magento brand, right? So that is just a
That's a
that is
good
a
point.
that is a piece of that is a real cost to a brand asset that what do they do with that? They can't just hand it out and say, oh, okay, well, we're done with this, right? Because someone has to be responsible for that decision, and someone has to say, well, keeping this brand, on our, in our stable is costing us something. Well, it's not costing them anything at all. In fact, it makes them a lot of money. There's still just chatting with people who kind of are in the know about volume that is still driven by Magento 1, Magento 2, and how some of that volume is still monetized, especially through payments, like especially through PayPal. There are tens and tens and tens of millions of dollars every year that just basically passive income. I would love to see the status quo evolve, but I think it's entirely in Adobe's hands. I think the community could probably organize itself well and give Adobe a narrative, basically stake out its ideological and sort of actual, like, actionable position, and have Adobe, interact with that position. And I have no idea what that position is. I have no idea what, how Adobe would respond, both immediately and then over time. I do think that Magento has always belonged to the community, even with Adobe taking on the community enablement machinery, which was myself and Sherry, community engineering, from like 2018 up through 2021, 22. But I think it's really the Magento ecosystem has managed to organize itself and thrive in ways that I would not have had not really predicted, and especially around VUCA and the fact that VUCA is now generally available for everyone, free of
Yeah,
charge.
that was very smart move. I think that they open it. It creates a completely new opportunities, and I have to agree that Huva, as even if it's a commercial product, it brought this important spark. But
Yeah,
maybe that's also because it is commercial, because the community itself is a bunch of passionate people. But it's always important to have some business, and Huva Commerce is kind of like Magento in the early stages, just using the same narrative, and I like it because
yeah.
for me running for years a business for a mid market, I can see that as much as I like Adobe is drifting away from mid market. It's
Oh
it's it's
yeah,
it's definitely, so this is different product right now. Like they build
yeah.
a great a great add-on to the experience
Experience manager.
manager,
Yeah.
but in the same, it's like even if it shares some technologies, it's a different product. And I'm super happy that I can see that interest in Magento open source is growing again. That at some point 2 years ago, I thought that we are on a decreasing path, but
Yeah.
right now I'm happy that I stay with Magento because I can see again merchants asking for open source solutions and asking for Magento because of many different things. SaaS is becoming expensive. Open source is way cheaper than it used to be. So like it's interesting to see that.
I think there are some existential threats. So I agree everything you just said. I agree with. But I just looking today at Shopify Editions. I mean, Shopify historically, they haven't been able to move nearly as quickly as we've been able to move in the open source world. I mean, and with good reason. I mean, when they have to, when they do something, they are doing it for millions of their customers, of which from a pretty broad swath. Uh, but when Shopify does something, like they move the entire market. I mean, I think back to when they said, "Hey, if you are a tech partner, if you're a technology partner in the space, your first million in revenue is yours." Like that really put a lot of pressure on the app store models that everyone else was using. And then and I think they do lead by example. They are absolutely a worthy competitor, a worthy component in the whole e-commerce platform marketplace. I but looking at Editions today, we are like, this is holy shit.
I saw your post on LinkedIn about Sidekick. So
Like sites.
that
So Sidekick is a perfect example of what I was talking about. Like they announced, when I was at Shopware, I mean, like ChatGPT comes out. That was, I think, 22. That was October of 22. ChatGPT
yeah.
drops, and of course, this is an epical moment. Our leadership like budget meeting that we had in Germany, like a little over a month later, or no, 2 months later. No, month later. I forget how months work. You know, we show up. I'm ready to fight. Do my budget ask everything. They're like, no, budget settled. Like we're it's just AI. We're going big on AI. It's like, okay. And then in May of 23, Shopware was the first platform to release, like agent, well, not agentic, sorry, generative like AI operations features. So this is all like back end stuff. There were a couple things that would change the experience for front end, but largely these were just like helping admins do admin stuff.
Better automation. Yeah, just like
Exactly.
smarter
Just
automation.
yeah, like make imports, exports not suck so much, like use natural language to do things. I mean, just make things a little bit easier, right? So this was not like hype stuff. This was actual real functionality. and then and of course shortly thereafter, Shopify announces Sidekick, and I was one of a few people who was like, yeah, don't wring your hands over this. This is not a big deal. They're not going to do anything with this for a long time. And that shit stayed in beta until like last year, I think. But the thing is, again, once they have enough time, and now that I think Shopify have really leveled up their development. They are all using AI internally. Um, they are moving more quickly. And so Shopify is just a better and stronger competitor every single day. And you look at this update. So now what they've really done is they've taken Sidekick, and it is like fully integrated, fully operational, like the Death Star. It is able to do workflows. It's able to build apps. Like, hey, I need an app that does this. That is shocking. But what really blew my hair back, from the community evangelist hat that I wear, was that they were smart enough to say, "Whoa, we'll let our not only will we let our merchants use Sidekick to do this stuff, they can then share these little mini apps with each other." And that's exactly how you make this sticky. This is really how you make your ecosystem sticky. You make them all friends with each other. I mean, it's kind of an open source community move to be like, hey,
Yeah,
you guys build this thing and you share it with each other.
and it's less
That
technical. Yeah, like it can
exactly
engage more small merchants who are
the
personally involved in their stores. They can play with it, and they
yeah,
can really merge that, like, or blend business and
yeah,
technology with that. That's
exactly.
really interesting. That kind of, I was always like a big fan of the idea that open source is the best, like best material for AI,
Yep.
because it's documented, it's free to use.
Mhm.
And but what they invented, how they do it, oh, that's kind of disturbing my my point of
So,
view.
well,
It's
and
making it different.
they've got, not only all the transactional data, but they understand. I mean, they have full insight into how the merchants' customers are interacting. They have full insight into what the merchants themselves are doing. I mean, I'm sure they can. They have this really data rich perspective on everything, and that is an existential sort of reality. uh, when you start being something other than that, right? I mean, now I do think, and I call this out on my LinkedIn post, and this is really driven off of something that uh, Mark, from GPMD, um, had posted. He did a brilliant post on this as well. Mark Slokuk. He he does rightfully call out that there wasn't much in this edition of editions for B2B. And I think, and I kind of extrapolate from that. I say, look, you got B2B, and I think you do have really complex Shopify Plus builds that have, real deep integrations, real deep customizations. Like, agencies working in that space are going to be, they'll still have business, they'll still be able to eat. But I do think this really will start to eat into billable hours, because they're going, the store operators can do a lot of the stuff that normally they've had to rely on agencies to do. And that trend will continue. Now, this is, I think, when people have talked about what does the future look like, what does development look like in 10 years. You have people prognosticating, saying, it's the language, underlying language won't even matter. Like, it doesn't even matter that, things don't matter.
Yeah,
um
exactly. Do we need one language with all the agentic approach? It's like that. It's not relevant. Yeah, like
it-
it's more how you build your prompts, how you
yeah.
create a task to build something. Less about the tools. It's like we moved from the really low level programming to the higher one, and
So
then
this is
next
yeah.
step.
So this is all fully. I mean, they've built the sort of the ideation, the infrastructure, and then, like the integration, the sharing with the ecosystem. I mean, it is the full package. So this is this is a bit of what the future looks like, and I think it's an existential threat for small. If you're working in small business as a shop, like with small businesses as a Shopify agency, I think the clock officially started ticking on you
Yeah,
needing to do the next thing. And I only say that, I'm not saying that to fearmonger. I'm saying that because there were agencies, just before, and when we had during ZERP, we had zero interest. The smart agencies saw, I think they saw some of the writing on the wall. This was even before generative AI came out, but like they saw that like we're getting to kind of the tail end of like we've extracted all the resources from the hills. So I'm gonna sell my agency. I'm gonna get out. We're gonna consolidate. We're gonna become a bigger agency. Um, but there were a lot of agencies that didn't figure that out. There were a lot of agencies that didn't figure out that their business model that they had that allowed them to succeed during Magento 1 did not translate into Magento 2. And so I've taken it as a personal mission because I have a little bit of culpability there, as, to warn agencies like get out now. You need to start making your transition, whether that's transitioning to a different industry,
Yeah.
transitioning
Like,
your ICP, going up market, whatever the case is. You got to figure that out now.
yeah, like I was there, it took us 2 years to rebuild our mindset, how
Yep.
we how
Yep.
we just, change Snowdog to that we adapt. And
And you got
it's interesting, yeah, how it all evolved, but it shows also how business requires us to
and you
adapt and don't think that we will be in the bubble forever.
and honestly, Snowdog's a really good example because you all were very involved. I mean, you were involved in the training and certifications that we built. You were involved in contributing to the core. Like this was not you weren't some just distal agency just kind of like disconnected from the on the ground, like in the core realities of what was happening there. So it's just really easy to, it's a kind of complacency, I guess. It's just really easy to be focused on doing your business and ignore some of these broader, meta level trends that are really going to change how the market even works and how the businesses work. But I think, Shopify again is really, this will be, looking back, this will be seen as a monumental shift, in just the nature of how merchants think of their platform. Because actually, if you think about it another way, the ability to customize your system, hand in hand, working with an agency, this was always the speciality of like open source, right? And now, you know now this is a reality for Shopify merchants, but they don't even need an agency to do it. I mean, that is whew, that's a moment.
Yeah, it is like, for a moment, like it was like 2 years ago. I thought, wow, it's time to let go Magento, go all big
Mm,
commerce, Shopify,
yeah,
or commerce tools. Like we were playing with many different tools on the market, and right now it's a little bit more, I think, steady or stable. That Shopify, of course, is growing and dominating, but it also this is a big advantage and big threat for them because they are so big and everyone is on Shopify. So a lot of merchants are actually looking for an alternative because they
yeah.
don't. This is like not everyone like merchants needs to be on Amazon, but it doesn't mean that they all want to be on Amazon for many different reasons. And that may be the same with Shopify. So that may be also the reason why Magento is becoming popular again.
Well, I
Uh,
think, and at the end of the day, there are, from a platform perspective, what Magento achieved, just in general, was pretty remarkable. Being able to serve, or being suitable, generally with with the help of agencies, being able to work for so many verticals, so many geographies, even different business models. The fact that Magento 1 was like a top 50 internet retailer B2B platform without even a B2B, like native B2B functionality. Like it is an incredibly adaptive application. And it is really hard to deliver that with a SaaS. But Shopify, I've always maintained, I don't, it could be a false dichotomy, or it could be, I've always liked to put this into a continuum where you had like consistency and reliability, lack of complexity, but also limited limited flexibility, like,
mhm.
and
Yeah,
SaaS at one end,
and
and then at the
that's
extreme
advantage
end you
for
have,
many.
yeah, yeah,
That's
exactly,
advantage for many that you just cannot do everything because if you
yes,
can, you keep destroying a lot of things and make
yeah.
your life complicated
I mean,
and everything
and
else.
Over the years, I mean, I have recommended Shopify when I've had this question. Like, what should I use? Like, I've recommended Shopify so many times, or BigCommerce so many freaking times, because like you just need to get up and running. Like, and your needs are not that complex, and I don't think your needs are going to be that complex in the near future. So you can get going on this. You'll be up and running. You'll get far more benefit from being up and running and selling and delivering and figuring the shit out, than you would by trying to build the perfect thing, and predict what you might
Mhm.
need. But
Yeah.
that's the one end, is that sort of TCO reliability, but a little bit, you're in a box and you're limited. And then at the other end, you have like completely bespoke software, or open source platforms. And then everyone's just trying to work towards the middle, right? They
Mhm.
basically trying to be, reliable, flexible, TCO, top of mind and easily calculable. But yeah, we're really seeing, I think, Shopify getting that right. And over time, I could see that more and more, like, there will just be more and more space to customize, and the things that merchants want to do, they can just literally use natural language, throw it at Sidekick, and it's going to work. But there will always be deep, deep, deep customization. They
Yeah,
will, and the complexities of B2B.